The man who made the fedora and the flex defense famous. Tom Landry's coaching career actually began during his playing days with the New York Giants. He became a player coach in 1954, and in 1955 he was the defensive coach and a Pro Bowl defensive back. 5 years later, he became the first head coach of the Dallas Cowboys, a job he would hold for the next 29 years. He led the Cowboys to 20 straight winning seasons, 13 division titles, 5 NFC titles, and 2 Super Bowl victories. Today, Tom is actively involved in business, heading up the Landry Investment Group, and is currently promoting his recently released autobiography. The Hall of Fame, a fitting tribute to one of the NFL's greatest coaches.
Tom Landry was stoic by design, a stone face beneath that trademark hat. But beneath all that, he and wife Alicia have a well-masked sense of humor.
We stayed married a long time, so we have to have a sense of humor, right? No, it's something, Pete, I started way back when I first started coaching with the New York Giants in the defensive sideline. Yeah, I felt, and I guess I kind of set my thinking with Ben Hogan. Every time I saw Ben Hogan play golf, I was amazed at how he could go round after round and never break his concentration. You know, hit the ball, never break his concentration. And I thought that's very important to success. And the other thing is calling plays. When you're calling plays from the sideline constantly, I'm never on the play that's called. I'm always on the play. What am I going to do? The next play, the next play, the next play. So I don't see Drew Pearson catch the great pass or Dorsett break into the open in there, and the fans see it and they get excited and they look down at me. What's the matter with that guy? You know, he's got a great play going.
Was it a burden to be called America's team?
Well, I think when it first came out, Pete, I thought it was something, gosh, we have to overcome. You know, and I could see in the eyes of the other, you know, Pittsburgh had beat, 4 Super Bowls they won. You know, there was reason for them to be upset. And it wasn't any of our doing, which I hope most people realize. It was NFL's tagging that year-end film.
Call him America's coach. Call him God's coach. Call him fired.
I really didn't feel real bitter, Pete. A lot of people wondered how you could handle it as well as I did in there. But you got to remember, I was coming to the end of my career. You know, I could have very easily quit after '85 when we had that great comeback and we beat the Giants and Redskins, who were better teams than we were, but we won the East. But I knew we were going down, but I just couldn't see our team go down. I wanted to see it on an upbeat when I stepped out in there. And so I said, okay, 3 more years, I'll do it. And so we were in transition there. And so when it came about, yeah, we weren't handled very well in there. It had been much nicer if they just called us in and said, hey, we're going to sell the club and this is what's going to happen and if we make this deal. But they didn't do that. They kept us in the dark. And that was a bad part of the whole deal. But I don't feel bad about it.
The Hall of Fame invites a study of history. So I asked Landry where he fits among the Lombardis and the Shulas.
Oh, gosh, you know I can't place myself. I mean, only people or history can put you in any category. I had a great run and enjoyed it tremendously. I think our 20 game years of winning football consecutively is a tremendous accomplishment of organization, of teamwork, of trying to work together through many years. I think that's probably our biggest accomplishment, you know, as a football team. As a coach, I don't know. I never wanted to coach when I was in the 50s. You know, I just happened to develop the 4-3 defense, you know, and I worked on it, and all of a sudden I was getting ready to quit, and here came Dallas with an offer, and my wife and I said, well, let's do it. We'll be fired in 3 years with an expansion team. Will never last. But I didn't realize we had a Clint Murkison as the owner, and when he gave me the 10-year contract, then coaching was my profession then.
In 1985, Tom Landry presented Roger Staubach when the Dodger was inducted. It was only fair that today, Roger returned the favor.
You know, a little over 20 years ago, a dream came true when I first stepped onto the field at Cowboy training camp as a rookie. 5 years ago, another dream came true when I stood before you as an inductee to this great Hall of Fame. My dreams and those of my teammates were fulfilled because of the efforts of one very special individual. Today, I have the honor of representing the players of the Dallas Cowboys and presenting Coach Tom Landry into the NFL Hall of Fame.
It makes it a little bit special today to have Roger Staubach, and present me for induction into the Hall of Fame. I could talk for hours about Roger Staubach because he is probably, there's probably no peer for players who can win the game in the last minute or bring a team from behind as Roger did. When we show our highlight films, you can see what Roger has done, for the Dallas Cowboys. And as he said, he's representing the players that I've coached through the years. There's some of them here. I see Bob Brunick out here. I see Ed Jones out here. Drew Pearson's here. Also Robert Newhouse in there. Jethro Pugh. All those great guys that played for the Cowboys. I know I missed some that are here, and I think Bob Brunick's here too. And I'm just delighted to have him here and all the other fans that are here today as well. It was a pleasure for me, really, to play for really only two teams. I went up with the New York Yankees in the All-American Conference, and I was there for only 1 year before they folded in the NFL. And then I went to the New York Giants, the Mara family, which really meant a lot to me personally. The Mara family, the Hallis family, the Rooney family, they're the heart of the NFL. And to be a part of that team and see the type of family atmosphere that they had. We didn't always agree, but we were like most families, we could always make up. But I had the chance to play, I had the chance to be a player coach for them and then a defensive coach. And those were the days when I first came up, we didn't even have television. Can you believe it? The television was not there in 1949, 50, in the early 50s. But I went in, when I coached all the way through the 50s with the New York Giants in there, I had Vince Lombardi and myself. We coached. Vince handled the offense, I handled the defense for the Giants until he went to Green Bay. And we had some great teams with the Mara family. Wellington and Ann Mara, probably here today. They're one of my best friends today. But as I moved into the Cowboys, the Dallas Cowboys, I had the real pleasure to have an owner by the name of the late Clint Murkison, who was very special in our whole setup. Clint Murkison, who took over the Cowboys in 1960 and who was with us until he passed away recently in there, he never once criticized me or second-guessed me in the whole time that I was with the Dallas Cowboys. I remember after the 1963 team, we had only won 5 games after 4 years at any one season. And everybody they called a press conference, and I remember we went to the press conference and everybody said, well, Landry's gone. Well, Clint walked in and says, I'm going to give him a 10-year contract with 1 year left. Now that's loyalty and that's support. And I believe that Clint Murkison was probably the one person that enabled us to go 20 years with winning season, because he took the pressure off of me, took the pressure off of Tex Schramm, and took the pressure off the organization. And that's what makes great teams and great dynasties. It's a great pleasure for me to come in to the Hall of Fame. Never thought I'd make it, but sure glad to be here. Thank you very much.
A memorable day here in Canton, Ohio. We'll be back with some final thoughts in just a moment.
Be Tom Landry taking what would amount to a victory lap here.
Interesting last night at the Hall of Fame dinner, which Dan emceed. Tom was the only one that got the standing ovation. Quite a tribute to his 29 years with the Dallas Cowboys. Some people remember him as a pretty good football player. And how about Ted Hendricks? He rambled around crushing quarterbacks for 3 different teams.
With Landry, Frank, I think it was just indicative of a universal respect, whether your favorite team was the Cowboys or whether it was someone else, you still respected the way Tom Landry went about his business. You liked the way his teams played.
I respected the way he left.
Yes, and here's maybe the favorite here. Pittsburgh always has a huge contingent that makes the trip over to Canton, Ohio, and of course they have 2 of their own going in today with Jack Lambert and Franco Harris, and Jack just from about 35 miles away, Mantua, Ohio, and so a big contingent down from there. Next to Landry, the biggest ovation probably saved for Jack Lambert.
Well, the guy like Landry, I mean, even if you hated the Cowboys and rooted against them and didn't like Tom when he coached, when he's out, you look at that whole body of work, and you just have to appreciate what it all meant when you take the overview.
And of course, the hat. The game isn't quite the same without the hat.
Of course, the good years of the Cowboys, it was a long time before they even started winning. He took over in 1960, 1965 before they even broke even on it. And he meant an awful lot. They called it, what, America's team for so many years?
Replaced by the Chicago Bears in the mid-'80s when they became hot. I think you clearly had to call the Bears America's team at that time.
Getting back to Jack Lambert, though, Jack Ham, the other linebacker from those Steelers of the 70s, now in the Hall of Fame. That leaves, what, Andy Russell, the only man out in the linebacking group.
Well, the crowd filing out at Fawcett Stadium in Canton, Ohio, and the Hall of Fame, as they've announced to the crowd, remains open until 8 o'clock. So a lot of the folks will head from the stadium back to the hall, where it's been a big day in Canton. The final score in the football game is Chicago 13 and Cleveland nothing. And long after everybody has forgotten about the game and the score, they will long remember the enshrinees. And we've talked to 6 of them through the course of the game, and we have saved the 7th for last, Mr. Tom Landry. And we congratulate you, sir.
Well, thank you. It's great. But they told me it's going to be exciting, and it's been exciting.
You were very eloquent up there today, Tom. And I think I said something earlier. You talked about maybe not showing the emotion. I think one of the things that has plagued you, if that's the right way to say to one of the most successful coaches in history, is the fact that you don't show emotion. You've heard it over and over and over, but I think people close to you, and as I feel that I am, know that in there it's burning all the time.
Oh, it is. I tell you, it can get really exciting inside, but even, I think I've trained myself not to show emotion on the sideline for, obvious reasons. And but I tell you, I was excited today, I have to admit.
Tom, when you look at the way that you were forced to depart the scene in Dallas, this has to be an enjoyable day, all the more so because of that.
Well, it really has. This last year has been very interesting. As I said today, you get fired at the start of the year and you get in the Hall of Fame at the end of the year. It's not a bad year, You've done pretty well.
It may seem crazy to some people, Tom, but, George Allen is coaching at Cal State Long Beach. Would you ever coach again? Do you want to coach again?
No, I'm not going to follow George now. I'm going to let George handle that. I think I'm going to be out of football now. I'm doing a lot of other things at this point, and it's very interesting, spending a lot more time with your family, which is the most important thing anyway. So you'd never say no to, for sure, but I don't think so.
What did you feel last night, Tom? I pointed out earlier, of all the inductees into the Hall of Fame today, you were the only one that got the standing ovation.
Well, I tell you, it's been an amazing year from that standpoint, Frank. People, they seem to identify with me, from the way I was released and so on. They're very receptive. They're very loving in all the situations I've been around. And I think that's what they're expressing, really, to me. And I felt, for me to be the only one with the standing ovation when all those guys I'm going in with, I'm excited about being with them. I don't have a chance as a head coach to be around, top players a lot and have a chance to visit with them as I've had through the week. And Lambert's not a bad guy after all. I sat by him all through because our alphabetical names are together, and he turned out to be a pretty solid guy.
Tom, you had Roger Staubach as your presenter. Was there ever, it's unusual you see a player being the presenter for a coach coming into the Hall of Fame. Was there ever a doubt in your mind that Roger was the man?
Well, when I thought about it, sure, there's a lot of people that's done a lot for me, towards my career. But I think the players, from a coaching standpoint, Dan, going in there, it's a lot different than a player. A player goes in on his ability, his athletic ability and what he's achieved. But a coach goes in because he has players performing for him, and that's what I tried to do with Roger, to have Roger represent all the players I've coached through the years that made it possible. Because without those guys, you don't make it very far in coaching.
What advice would you give a Mike Ditka coming off a 6-10 season after all the success he played for you, Tom? You know him well. The problems he's had, the heart attack a couple of years ago. He's coming off a really tough year, and obviously, he's Mike Ditka. He's volatile. He's explosive. What would you say to him?
Yeah, but he's pretty solid, Frank. I think, Mike changed a great deal when he was on my staff. When he first came to me, I couldn't believe it. You know, he was so different than me, my personality and all, that I never thought I'd survive Mike Ditka. But I did. He changed, you know, and the guy's got a great heart. And what do you have to do after any losing season, Frank? You got to go back to the drawing boards again. You got to look at it and see what is happening and set your goals and get on them and work hard. That's the only way I ever know to get out of that valleys that we're in, and we've all been in them before.
Well, I played in the NFC East for 13 years, which meant 26 games against the Dallas Cowboys. And, Tom, you and your team represented nothing but class. And even though I got sick of losing to you, the respect was always there. And congratulations on today.
Well, thank you,
just wonderful.
Dan. It's a real pleasure. Thank you.
Tom Landry and 6 others going into the Hall of Fame today in Canton, Ohio.
Faith in my family have always been my first priority. And in their eyes, I've always been a winner. I've coached some of the greatest athletes the game has ever known. But perhaps the best part of it all was the spirit of competition. To know the sense of victory in winning 2 Super Bowls, but also to know how to lose a game without losing your will to win or your dignity. That's really the greatest lesson that the game can teach any of us. And so I've come full circle to the things that are the most dear to me, my faith, my family, and the game I love. When you visit the Pro Football Hall of Fame, you'll see this old cowboy, Tom Landry, who's inviting you now to share the adventures of the game that I love so much. It's all here, waiting for you at the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio. Don't miss it.
This message furnished by the National Football League.